Well, hi, Lexi. Thank you for joining me this evening. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, I appreciate you having me.
So, Lexi, there is so much to unpack here, and there's a very good reason why I have you on this interview. Is first of all, what caught my attention was the tutoring. So we'll get to that at the end, but because I really want to start with your time and unpack your time at Purdue and what led you to become an engineer, and then your time being an engineer, and then finally the tutoring to continue to mentor students who are to become maybe engineers down the road. So let's just start with, how did you end up at Purdue University in engineering? And then how
All
did you end
right.
up as a visual design engineering and multidisciplinary engineering?
Okay.
So we're
So
going to
there's
start
a little
there.
bit of a path around that. So I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina. And so the way I heard about Purdue was actually my dad, my uncle, and my grandpa all went there. And so I knew it was a school. I knew it was a good school. I had seen them play football on TV. And as I came into high school, I started really realizing where my talents were and what I enjoyed. And I realized that math was something I really enjoyed. I really liked the analytical side of things. But at the same time, I also wanted to be able to be, and I've always had a passion for art and design. And so I knew I didn't want to be going to, the School of Arts, because that's always been an outlet for me. When I'm stressed, when I'm doing homework, my outlet would be to paint or to draw or, use that artistic side. But I did want to somehow incorporate the creativity aspect of that into the analytical side that I knew was kind of my strong suit. And so that's what led me towards engineering. And actually, my freshman year, when I picked engineering, I was not sure I would stick with it. I wasn't doing it because, I had to be an engineer. My dad wasn't an engineer. My grandpa wasn't an engineer. They were both in Cranert School of Business. So my brother actually also went to Purdue, and he was a couple years ahead. He was trying the engineering thing, but we're pretty different. So I wasn't sure, maybe this isn't for me. And as I went on, I was like, wow, first year engineering, pretty tough, but, I like the challenge kind of thing. And so as that progressed, I realized, I want to still incorporate a little more of like the visual design stuff. And my roommate freshman year actually was also an engineer in first year engineering with me. And she ended up switching after her first semester over to interior design. So she went like to the opposite end of the spectrum. And then she's coming home with, all these art, like, really cool, like art, like projects and stuff. And I was like a little bit jealous. And I was like, oh man, I'm just sitting here, trying to read a textbook, and you get to kind of like do this. And I was like, how do I tie this in? And I talked to her, and she mentioned that one of the routes she considered taking was multidisciplinary engineering. And that's kind of the first time I really heard about it with kind of an eye for maybe I want to do that. I know we went over all the different types of engineering freshman year, and that kind of helped me understand a little more, but really hearing my own friend kind of explain it to me was really helpful. And so that's when I decided, maybe I'll look into this. And I talked to Ms. Peckney, and she kind of described it to me and said, that would be a way to incorporate my creative side and my artistic side into engineering. And so I really liked that idea. And so freshman year, I decided to switch over to that and ended up loving the flexibility. And I felt like it didn't restrict me to, just the half of my brain that is just the analytical side. And it was able to kind of allow me to explore what I really wanted to do.
When you did that, when you decided, and she and Miss Peckney really led you into probably at that visual design engineering, what did you see down the road for you then? Like, how did you know
Actually,
what to do with it?
yeah. So actually, I kind of have always had a couple different passions, right? So one of the things that, off the top of my head, I was like, well, this will really tie in those two things along with my interest in cars. I was like, I want to design cars. And so that was kind of my, I guess, ambition for sticking with engineering and doing visual design with it, because I wanted to design cars. And I ended up interning at an electric car company called NEO my junior year. And that was kind of gave me that feel of working in the automotive environment, but not the traditional automotive environment. And so that's definitely something that, I've had a lot of interest in. And the other thing that I really liked was just, I don't know, I guess it kind of pulled in more opportunities to work with people and be less of the, stereotypical, I sit at my computer, I get my work done, and then I tell my boss about it. And, that is fine, but that's not how I am. I'm much more interactive. I like people. I want to, work with people, whether that is by designing cars and kind of having a lot of these collaborative environments, or, and then tutoring was kind of the other thing that I've always loved, going through all the way back through high school. 9th grade is when I started tutoring, and I started tutoring middle school kids at that point. And as I went through high school, I kept with the tutoring all the way through my senior year. Loved it so much that I came to Purdue and I tutored a little bit freshman year. I was a little bit really just trying to figure out the whole college thing and how to manage my time properly, still have a social life, but be able to get good grades. And all of that didn't allow me very much time to tutor. And so I only did a little bit freshman year, but then sophomore through senior year, I tutored a lot. And I absolutely loved it because of, the creative aspect that comes with kind of designing different ways to teach people and using different techniques, and then working, face to face with people and making it this collaborative environment. That's kind of a challenge because a lot of the people who need tutoring or, are maybe not doing well with their grades and they're not explaining it, they're not understanding it the traditional way that it's explained. And so you kind of have to be creative in order to come up with different ways for different types of learners to understand the material. And then just the satisfaction and gratification that comes with someone who's not a math person, really understanding, hey, I actually can do this. Anyone can do this. Math can actually be my thing. I just haven't understood the way that it's been explained to me. And so that's something that was just really powerful, just seeing people go from, I just don't want to fail, to, getting A's and B's. Like that's just, uplifting. And so just being able to work with people and have that creative environment, but also kind of hold true to like the math and analytical side is really what I guess inspired me and why I wanted to keep through that.
How did you find the students who needed the help? How did you advertise at Purdue? And was it mostly engineering students, or who else? Like, who was your biggest group of students that you helped?
So I would say a lot of the people came to me just from looking at Purdue math tutors. And then there's a site with some math tutors, just students at Purdue who want to tutor in their spare time. And then I think a lot of people it was a lot of word of mouth, I think, after that. So people realized, they're learning well from me. And so they would recommend me to their friends. And then I'd get a lot of clientele through that. And a lot of my clients were really, I had some engineering students, but I had a lot of students who were not engineers and had to basically make it through Calculus 2. And they were maybe like a vet. I remember I had a vet senior student who was trying to apply for vet school. And she's like, I don't understand math. That's why I want to be a vet. why am I going through Calc 2? And I was like, we're going to get you through. And so we did. And, it was a lot of people like that where, they didn't think math was their thing. They were in a major that wasn't that math heavy, you would think, but then they still had to make it through Calc 2, which was a pretty, tough class. So I'd get a lot of students like that, and then some engineers too.
Got it. So I love this because I know where it's going to lead you to past Purdue. But before we leave the Purdue days, talk about your mentorship for Introduce a Girl to Engineering. What is that about?
So for Introduce a Girl to Engineering, basically what would happen would be a lot of the engineers who were women would kind of come together and have these, I guess, talks and how to incorporate that into like local high schools. And so then the local high schools would bring in girls who were considering STEM courses or engineering and just wanted to see what it's about. And basically it was our job to mentor them throughout the day and take them around different classes and answer any questions they might have and kind of get them excited and show them that, engineering can be for women too. It's not just, guys only, and we're just going to sit there and, do physics the whole day. Like no one talks. Like it was kind of to show that really you can break the mold of what a lot of people traditionally think of when they think of an engineer, which is, something I really tried to do kind of throughout my whole time at Purdue. I wanted to, be a woman in engineering. I wanted to go with a non-traditional engineering major and kind of, with some of my internships, I tried to work at sort of non-traditional companies like NEO. And so I really like the idea of, I guess, breaking the mold in a way that can potentially inspire others to do the same if that's something that, they're interested in, and show them that they can.
I love that. I think, the number of people you've mentored and just to help get through math, but also to see the examples that you're leading. I think it's fantastic, Lexy. This is exciting. I could not wait for this talk, and I just wanted to hear that. And I know that there'll be others that'll see this and think, oh my gosh, she's the one that tutored me. Help me get through. Okay, so past Purdue, what was your first adventure outside of Purdue, and what are you doing now?
Okay. So my first adventure outside of Purdue was to work for what was then Delphi Technologies. So now they were bought by BorgWarner. And so I'm still with the company, and I am a mechanical engineer for them. And so that kind of relayed back to me being able to work in the automotive field. So this is a much more traditional automotive field than NEO, but it's really cool to kind of see both ends of the spectrum, right? So one was a startup, global startup that's pretty similar to Tesla, but 10 years newer. And then to work for Delphi Technologies, now BorgWarner, which has been around for a long time. And I actually found out afterwards, after I had already hired on, that my grandpa, I think, worked for them. It was his first job or something out of college. And I was like, I didn't even know that. And now I'm working for them. But, that just kind of shows how long they've been around and really just been kind of in that field. So it was cool to see both ends, I guess, of the spectrum.
And you can keep going. So you, what is your role there now? I know that, things have switched a little bit. So tell us a little bit more about what you're doing there.
Okay. So basically, as a mechanical engineer, I've kind of worked on several different projects for tier 1 automotive suppliers, and as a tier 1 automotive supplier, and we build inverters for electric vehicles and hybrids. And so basically what that does is take the power and make it usable for the car. And so as a mechanical engineer working at a heavily electric company, I get to learn a lot about the electrical aspect of it. But I also, a lot of what I do is really kind of helping with the actual box that the inverter goes in, and having it be able to go through R&D and a bunch of different tests in order to prove that it'll basically be safe within the car and be able to withstand whatever the car is going to go through, whatever crazy, specs they come up with. We get to make sure that, we will be able to provide this safe, high voltage component for the customer. And so that's really interesting because it's such a, I guess, complex and specific product that it's like you're not going to learn about. I mean, you might know what an inverter is from college, but you're not going to really know kind of the ins and outs of how everything works. And I'm still learning every day there with what we're doing and how to do it and what the best practices are, and just learning, because some of it's hands-on, some of it's designing an NX and things like that. And so it's pretty cool to be able to, work different projects and see how this inverter basically would be different for each car and each company, and be able to provide that to them.
Lexy, do you personally have like an all electric car? Do you like them?
So I do like them. I think there's a lot about electric cars that we're kind of in this, I guess, almost, I don't know. It's like we're kind of in a little bit of like a in between from this gas powered vehicles that we've had around forever, and then these electric ones that have kind of been coming around more recently, and where you live. So I would say, also depending on where you live, they may be more helpful for the environment than maybe other places, because it depends on how they're powered, right? So if you're using like coal fire, if you're using kind of renewable energy sources, it's really, really beneficial. But unfortunately, I still have the same, car that I've had for a number of years now, and it's nothing special. But eventually I would like to get something electric if I were to live somewhere where that would be more beneficial for the environment. So
I'm just teasing you. I'm having this conversation hopefully soon with one of our other alumni, Rob St. Clair. I don't know if he graduated near you or not, but he was acoustical engineering, and
I definitely know the name.
Okay, he worked on the propulsion for the all electric Mustang. And I know that's going to be really important, right? Because as a muscle car, to be able to hear that engine rev when there's really
not an engine.
Yeah, it's electric, right?
It's just an electric.
So I can't wait. We're going to have that conversation soon. So I'll be able to put these two together. It's very interesting. How your lives
I always wonder.
intersect.
Yeah, because I know they have to use kind of the audio of the car in order to make it sound like it's revving. And but I do have to say, like, I see a lot of potential in, electric vehicles. I could see that really in the future kind of taking over. We just need more infrastructure for it. I think that's one of the things. And then harvesting the energy, that's kind of hard to do in a lot of the states in a renewable way. So, it's pretty different for every state. And I don't think people think as much about, how they're getting that electricity, and, is that sustainable or not? And so that's something also that's pretty interesting to me.
I'm gonna switch gears on you, because I really want people to know about your new venture. And it's probably not new because you did it through Purdue, or you did it while you're at Purdue, but you've really continued to mentor and to tutor students, high school students, college students. We're going to unpack that now, because I think I want people to understand what your mission is, your vision, your cause, what the business is, and then I want to direct you to what students should know if they've never worked with a tutor before, but they really, really, really need help, we'll kind of roll and end that way, if that sounds good to you. So tell us about this
Okay.
continuation of your tutoring.
Yeah. So for, like you said, I mean, it's kind of been brewing for a while. I've been passionate about tutoring and about working with people and about leading and mentoring for a long time. And it's just something, that more recently, I just really felt called to actually be able to pursue. And so I started a company called Collegiate Tutors LLC. And essentially, what I did was I said, there's this great need for, extra help with, people need to learn in the ways that they are able to learn. And sometimes, having a Zoom call with, 100 people is pretty hard to really retain that information. Or even if you're in person in a class, but you've got 350 people in a lecture hall. I remember my days at Purdue, that was very common to have, especially in those freshman year classes, you've got 400 kids in practically a stadium. And so if you have a question, it's really hard to just be like, oh, let me ask real quick. And it's also hard, a lot of people don't really want to speak up in front of 400 people. And at the end of class, to go talk to the teacher, well, maybe that teacher has another class to teach, or maybe you have to go get to a class, and it's kind of hard. And I know there's office hours and stuff, but for a lot of students, it's like they really need that one-on-one. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that it's really hard to adjust from high school, where you have maybe 20 kids in a classroom, to going into a Big Ten university where you've just got 400. I mean, and so when I see that, and then I see coronavirus and all of this, these changes in learning environments, and I mean, that's got to be tough, like to be able to adapt to college in the first place, plus adapt to something that is completely unprecedented in our time, and be able to still succeed. That's really tough. And so my heart kind of went out to, students who are currently at Purdue and really trying their best, but, it's just tough. And so I wanted to be able to provide something that could actually really help students. And I wanted to incorporate the things that I know I had tutors going through school at Purdue, and maybe not in math, but in other subjects, that I wasn't as strong in. I definitely had some tutors. I had one in electrical circuits engineering. That was a very confusing class for me. And, there was no shame in it. It was the only reason I was able to really understand what was going on, because I'd show up to the lecture hall and there's all these people and they're explaining something really quick and I don't really know what's going on. And then I'd follow up, with my tutor, and we'd go through it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much more sense because you explained it in a way that makes sense to me. And so that's something I've really tried to make, really important with my tutors. So I've kind of pulled together a team of tutors who I have, spoken with face to face. I want to make sure that they are personable. I want to make sure that, you can have a conversation with them. I don't want it to be like really awkward for clients. I want, my tutors to be able to hold themselves and be excited with what they do. And so I've made sure to, pick people like that who also have that strong math background or physics background, and be able to tutor those subjects. And so I kind of took what I knew I wanted in tutors, along with what I saw people liked about when I was tutoring a lot, and then kind of basically pull all those things together and look for the best fit people that I could find. And I was honestly so blessed to find such an amazing group of tutors who, really fit all of that and are, easy to talk to, but they can explain the material in whatever way you need. And that to me is what really speaks volumes.
Lexy, are any of them from Purdue as well? Are they fellow classmates that you knew at Purdue, or just how did you find this group of tutors?
So I actually found this group on LinkedIn. My original vision was more to gear towards current college students, but I think a lot of the time while I was recruiting, students were having, going through exams and stuff, and I kind of reached out a little bit to some people I saw in multidisciplinary engineering, kind of wanted to see if they were interested. But I think they just had so much on their plate at the time. And I would, love to have more Purdue students specifically, but at this point, I don't have Purdue grads, but I do have people who really have a passion and have basically found me. And, some of them are like nuclear engineers with, masters or PhDs. I've got one guy who is professionally a high school teacher employed. And, these people just have a passion for tutoring, and it's really just what they want to do. And a lot of them, they could be out there doing whatever, like being the nuclear engineer, but where they found their passion is with teaching and tutoring. And so I really wanted to find people who were extremely passionate about it. And so I feel like I have. And of course, I think that you've also seen my mission, vision, and cause. So I've kind of talked about the client side, and now we're kind of getting into the tutor side. So the other thing is, I've also with, some of my entry level tutors are people who I'm kind of training to be the best they can be for having less than a year of experience. And, some of them are actually first generation college students. And that's somewhere where I really want to, be able to help. And I know that a lot of times with first generation college students, maybe they don't get the support that, they really need. And just to be able to make a substantial amount of money compared to, I remember being on campus, like, I think there was a job for like $8.50 an hour or something, and everyone was going crazy because it was more than minimum wage, and you could still work around the flexible hours to have your classes and do your homework and still have a college life. And I just remember thinking, like, that's not gonna, pay for college very quickly, like, and that's tough. And so I wanted to be able to provide a job for, college students or recent grads, which I do have recent grads. And, if they're first generation and they're really trying to pay off those bills and, really feel that support, maybe financially, maybe just support in, going to college is the right move. I really wanted to be able to accommodate them. And so that's kind of another reason I picked the tutors I did, because they really fit in with the mission vision kind of piece. And then my cause is kind of the third party. So we've got, the students or the clients, and then we've got the tutors, and then we've got, the people who are in high school who are maybe at risk of graduating and don't have the resources they need to get the help they need and to be able to kind of break the cycle and get into college. I mean, it's like hyper competitive to get into places like Purdue. And, my heart goes out to the people who really can't quite get the help they need. And so what I'm doing with my cause is basically all donations I'm putting directly towards paying the tutors so that I can still hold true to my mission and vision, and pay them to basically work with students who are at risk of graduating and who don't have the resources and are identified by partner schools in order to provide free tutoring to those students. And so that's, something I really wanted to be able to incorporate and have a win-win-win situation.
Lexy, I just think that is fantastic. That was the one thing that I my eyes went straight to when I was looking up, the website and just seeing what you're about. And I know there's so many people out there trying to do, something like this, but to actually have the experience that you had even at Purdue and bringing that forward, having the experience of tutoring, knowing that you have this team put together. Something you mentioned with COVID, with the pandemic, have you seen an uptick since in clientele, like since you started this? Have there been a lot more students using your services?
So I've really started it like during the pandemic. So as far as pre-pandemic versus now, I really would only have the comparison from when I officially started the new name, of the company. I really only have, during COVID students. So I couldn't really give you kind of a change on that, but I do know during college, when I tutored, a lot of it, because it was word of mouth, people already knew about me. They referred me to their friends, and then they'd have me for repeat semesters a lot of the time. So now because I'm fairly new with the new name, I can't quite give, I guess, a change on how it is, but it has changed in the way that we tutor. So now, it's like we want to be accommodating to not, to the people who maybe are a higher risk and, be able to do sort of this virtual thing. But I really wanted to pull as much of this in-person feeling as possible by making sure that the tutors are on camera, visible, just like we are right now, the whole time, where they can have this conversation and they can see this face-to-face interaction. But at the same time have kind of the virtual whiteboard where they can write and they can see what each other are writing and interact one-on-one in that way. So kind of to simulate the in-person learning.
I gotcha. And I know how important that is. And I'm going to give you one example. It's actually kind of a funny story, and whether I cut this out of this recording or not. When my son was in high school, he needed help in math, and Rose Holman, another university here in Indiana, had a math tutoring service free because they had, I think, a donor or some kind of a grant. And so it was 1-800-ASK Rose, or I think it was 1-800-ASK Rose. And so my son called, and he got a college girl. And so he was only, I think, a sophomore in high school. He just froze when she asked him like what high school he was at. He just couldn't even talk. And I mean, it was so awful. I felt so awful for him, but he ended up calling 2 or 3 times and got help. I mean, he really did. They really, and it was only a phone call, right? No, we didn't have the technology then. We didn't even have FaceTime or anything. This has been, 10 years ago already. Fast forward, I'm sitting at a table at a conference for engineering education next to a faculty member at Rose Holman. And she said she was in the math department. I explained to her, I said, oh my gosh, thank goodness for your tutoring program for math, because my son really needed help and he got it, and he was able to, keep moving forward. And so we got in a little conversation because she was talking about how they weren't sure if they were going to keep it going, if there was funding. And I said, oh, yes, you have to. Like, I don't know how you do it, but you have to do it. And she said, just coincidentally, what does your son do now? And it kind of struck me. I said, he's a math teacher. It just kind of was that full circle where I thought. And so what I was thinking about with you is your passion for learning. And, obviously, you're a practicing engineer, but you also have this humanitarian heart. We always talk about every engineer is a humanitarian at heart, because you all are trying to fix a problem, right? And you're out there helping students who, are getting stuck and they need help. And especially in a pandemic, when the way the content is being presented to them to learn is different than even how you learned and how, anybody else learned before you. And so it's just so important. But I think you never know who you're going to inspire and what they're going to do out of this. They might have that same generous heart that they see Lexy giving to them about, whether they're paying for it or not, right, through tutoring. But I mean, I think your group of people that you've put together and in your mission and what you're doing and the cause of helping these underrepresented students who really don't have the resources at their reach. I love it. And I want to bring that back around because so do you have partnering schools? You were talking about the partnering schools that for the underrepresented students. Do you have that? And do you have room to grow? Like if listeners are listening to this and think, ooh, I'd like to get involved in that. How can they get involved in that?
Yeah, definitely. There's always room to grow with that. So right now, obviously, we're trying to partner with Purdue for students there who are maybe first generation and could use a little help with resources. So that's kind of one school. Of course, I have to choose my alma mater. And then also another school that we are working out a partnership right now with is Indianapolis Public Schools, some of the schools within that district, because they are, local. And, I did a little research on them and felt that, they'd be a really good fit for that. And so I'm really excited to be able to do that and, be able to keep it kind of local, but of course, there's always room to grow. I mean, I would love to see this grow. It is based off donations. And right now, we kind of have like a donation pot that is ready to be used. And, the tutors love it because then they get more clients and stuff. And it's really, really helpful for that too. So it's really just a blessing. And I'm really happy to be able to do this. And, so definitely if, there's anyone that, we can help, we'd love to.
And when you say Indianapolis Public Schools and Purdue, so this is high school through college for math,
Yes.
for just any level of math that they need. Any other classes like physics?
So some physics, the focus right now is in math, because that's kind of where my background was, and just to keep it focused as we start. But we are looking into, so right now we do have, because a lot of the tutors who are really math focused also are very good at physics and have tutored physics. So we also kind of do physics on a case-by-case basis. So like freshman and sophomore year physics, physics 1 and 2, those are kind of the main ones. But beyond that, we are looking to expand. So we're trying to stay focused for now, but we are looking to expand to maybe English. We've heard there's kind of a need with that, from some of our, some high schools we've talked to. They've said that there's sort of this gap because of COVID. And so that's something we'd like to look into maybe expanding into, but so far it's pretty much math and physics.
And I would say that's where the need is. The biggest need. I'm sure there's a need everywhere, but I'm sure that's the biggest need. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I noticed you and I have exchanged some notes back and forth, and you have some blog posts about just advice, especially for those on how they learn to figure out how they learn so they'll know how to be tutored. So kind of along those lines. And for those of you listening, watching, I'll have those links in the description of not only Collegiate Tutoring LLC, but also the links to the blogs that you specifically call out Purdue and first year engineering and some of the classes that they may need help with. So talk about that in the sense of what advice do you have to students who they need help? They're not quite, they just don't know how to ask for help. They're afraid to ask. I don't know what it is, but maybe explain, what should they know? What's a good tip for them to get started in this, to ask for help?
Yeah, so definitely. That's why I started the blog. Like you said, I wanted to be able to basically provide just my own advice on, mistakes I made and kind of how to avoid those, maybe lessons learned, and then also just, things that I found are really helpful. And maybe I figured them out junior or senior year, but if you can read them and figure it out freshman year, awesome. And maybe you won't have that little dip in your GPA, you know, that you gotta fight off for the next 3 years or so. But basically, I post each week, and each week actually is supposed to correlate with what the students would be going through that week at Purdue. And so, of course, this can be used by, you know, non-Purdue students or people who are in high school and maybe looking into going to Purdue and just seeing, because, you know, if you can figure out the way you learn and the best way to study for you in high school, then that's even better. But I know that, you know, maybe ways that I studied in high school weren't quite, they may have done the job in high school, but then by the time I got to college and I tried to apply those, I was like, wait, this is different. And so basically, by posting kind of my experiences and how to know that, you know, I remember like people would tell me, well, you just read the textbook, and then I'd read it and I'm like, well, that didn't do anything. And I'm like, I think I was thinking about lunch the whole time. And so then to, you know, basically be able to go back and say, okay, because just because they can listen to the lecture or read the textbook, like I might not learn that way. And that's kind of when I realized, you know, and especially with tutoring all these different people, I was seeing that I would explain something one way to someone and they'd be like, oh my gosh, I get it. And then I'd explain it the same way to someone else. And they're like, I don't get it at all. And so I'd have to like come up with a new way. And people learn, you know, with different learning styles or combinations of those. And so that's kind of what the first week was about. And then to kind of move from there and be proactive, you know, that's another thing that I think is really tough for college students, especially the first 2 years, because there's just so much kind of thrown at you. And, you know, a lot of that isn't even academic. I mean, a lot of that's social, and that can be, you know, very overwhelming as well. And so, you know, being able to be proactive and kind of assess, like, here's where I have needs and, you know, maybe where I'm not quite meeting my needs. And it's honestly, that's, you know, the people I've noticed who reach out for, you know, realize they're having trouble, you know, if they're having problems with one homework assignment, they're probably going to have problems with the next one. That's a lot of things, especially in math and physics, are building off previous lessons. And so the people who are really proactive about it say, you know what, I'm not getting this. Like, however it's being taught to me is not the way that I learn. And those people, you know, would reach out to me. I remember, you know, when I was tutoring there, they'd reach out to me the first couple of weeks and say, hey, I need some help. I don't know what's going on. And the people who started with me early, I was able to really help them get a firm foundation so that by the time, you know, the exam hit, it was just like, oh, okay, so this is more like that thing. And then this is kind of like this, except, you know, done up a little bit. And it was like they kind of had the framework to just put the puzzle pieces in later. And I think that's something I really want to stress, you know, whether, you know, you need a tutor or, you know, if you've got a friend who can explain it to you or whatever the situation may be, you know, don't be afraid to reach out for help. Sometimes staring at the textbook and trying to figure it out for 10 hours is a lot less efficient than, you know, 30 minutes or an hour with a tutor or, you know, with someone who can help you or, you know, a different way that maybe helps you learn better. So that's kind of something I'm trying to embody with that blog, just basically week by week, you know, be able to identify the way you learn and be able to do that early so that you don't put the stress on yourself the night before to, you know, figure it all out right then and there. And, you know, and not beat yourself up just because you don't learn the same way as maybe your roommate who's like listening to lectures, doing laundry. It's like, I didn't learn that way, you know? So.
I love that. You're providing such valuable resources, even without, you know, the actual, you know, hour with a tutor, but the blog itself, I think, has some great information in there, advice, tips, hints. I mean, just how, like you said, like not everybody learns the same. And so finding those ways, to just make it through that class, because you never know when you're going to use it. That's the thing.
Right.
I think we all want to learn. I know sometimes we think it's a waste of time, but you'll pull it back in somehow, some way. You'll be glad that you learned it. there's a reason why it's part of the curriculum. We'll just leave it at that. There's a reason for it. It may seem like a waste, but there's a reason. So what's next for you, Lexy? Is this, I mean, as far as, you know, the engineering gig, the tutoring gig, what's going on? What do you think's next for you? Or are you pretty comfortable where you're at right now?
Well, so right now, basically, I want to be able to put as much into my engineering job as as I can in order to be the best mechanical engineer I can be. And at the same time, I really do want to also be able to pursue my passion and be able to, really help these people that I see such a need, especially at this time. I mean, like I said, I had been thinking about doing something like this for years. I mean, I thought about it in college, and I ended up getting a few other people actually into tutoring in college at Purdue, because I was like, hey, look, like, it's fun. You get to work at, the hours you want to work, as many hours as you want to work. You can work at convenient locations. You don't have to like leave campus. You can actually really help people in a way that like they get all excited, and then you kind of build this relationship with them, and you can really help them both with study tips and mentoring, but also with just the actual material and tutoring. And then on top of that, you're actually making a substantial pay that can really help you, pay some of those student loans. And so I ended up getting, a few others to actually start tutoring during college. And it's just something, I wanted to be able to continue now that the need, I just see this need from the students, and how basically COVID has turned everything upside down. And it's just a great time to be creative, because we're humans, we adapt. We just need to figure out the best way to do that. And so that's kind of why I've decided to pursue this passion.
Well, I'm so glad that we can now share this with a broader audience so that they can learn about it and hopefully follow up and do their own tutoring with you. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me about this, and and about your engineering. And I want to finish up, because you, at the very beginning, you talked about why you came to Purdue. So it's kind of that cliffhanger of, who is your dad, who is your grandpa, and who else did you say? Your uncle?
My uncle and my brother.
And your brother. Who are these people? And do we know them?
The Ackermans.
Ackerman.
So
we should know. Yes, we should know. As soon as you said that, I'm like, oh my gosh, her name's Ackerman. So for those who don't know, tell them who your family is.
Yeah. So my brother does consulting. He was an industrial engineer. And then my grandpa is retired, but like I said, he started out at what was then, I think, Delco. And so he did business, and now he's retired. And then my dad is currently working for a startup called F5 Sports. And so they basically sell these baseballs that have all this, I don't totally understand, how or anything, but it has all this circuitry inside, where basically they can throw the baseball and it will tell them all the different things that, thousands of dollars of equipment would tell them. And it basically can do that all within the ball. And so they're basically selling those to different teams, MLB and colleges and stuff. And so I know that's something he's having a great time doing that. So, but he's kind of on the business finance side of that. But he works hand in hand, obviously, with the engineers. So.
And as a visual design engineer, with your art background, you might be able to, I don't know, somehow help with that too.
Yeah, I've told him, I'm like, I'm happy to help. I was like, I need some website design, I can do that. So
That's right. Well, we'll leave it right there. And I just, like I said, thank you so much. I can't wait to share this. I can't wait to share the links so that people will find you and hopefully send some students that are in need your way.
Thank you. Yes. And thank you so much for having me on here to be able to talk with you about this and really, get the word out that, I'm doing this, and I'd really like to be able to help whoever I can.